Hey y'all, hope you're doing well today. So today's message, we're going to talk about being true to you and how sneaky and covert um, the whole agenda of deception is. And when I say agenda of deception, I feel like it can work either through people consciously or through people unconsciously, via the spiritual realm, right? So I hope you enjoyed the message today. I hope it gets the wheels turning, which is always my goal. So I think a lot of us sometimes wonder why the news, the major news outlets, networks, whatever, tend to focus on the most extreme of anything, of any already newsworthy topic or happening. It's like, instead of just covering it, just, unbiased and straightforward, they have to find and present the most extreme end of this news story spectrum. And so it's kind of like, why? Doesn't it just kind of make you want to ask why? And so that's kind of where my mind went. And then from there, a message came together, right? So let's look into it. I stopped watching the news a long time ago because I learned that if there's anything that's, that I can do anything about or that affects me directly, I'm going to hear about it. I will find out about it. And this is one of those topics that is easily sensationalized. And I'm the kind of person that likes to look at things from all angles, as you know. If you've ever watched my channel before, I'm sure you know that. So it's kind of like I can see both sides of the coin, or all the different, or most, I wouldn't say all, but I feel like the only all-knowing entity would be God, right? But those of us who try to play devil's advocate and who sincerely try to understand concepts that are outside of our current paradigms, operating paradigms, a lot of times we can make an argument for either case or either, perspective or whatever. But when it comes to news, it's not a matter of not caring. And I certainly do believe that everything we do in this life has a ripple effect. Everything that we do in this life, it matters. And that goes for, inside looking out and outside looking in. So, and I say this because when, it's easy to dismiss news stories that don't seem to directly affect you, but they can indirectly affect you and still have a great impact. And I understand all of that. But I feel like caveats and over explaining everything isn't really needed for my primary viewers. But I'm wanting to kind of give just a little glimpse into my perspective for anyone who's new coming to my channel. So just please know that when I make statements, they're never meant in the spirit of an absolute determination on things. It's just that we simply don't have the time to detail everything out, right? So, okay. In general, everything I would say is generalized, right? That I present for that reason. So, anyway, the news, while it is important, can certainly get amplified unnecessarily, and for whatever reason or reasons, and it can cause a lot of anxiety and stress and feelings of helplessness and powerlessness. And from a Christian perspective, we are told in the Bible that we are supposed to think on specific things which are good and true and lovely and all of the good things. We're supposed to take all of our thoughts captive, right? In order for under the power of our discernment through the guidance of God and Christ, if you're a Christian, right? So we're supposed to do that. We're supposed to filter everything we're exposed to, as opposed to just taking everything in, whether it's news or any kind of entertainment like music. It might have a great beat, but what are the lyrics actually saying? Movies, imagery that's presented to us in movies. There's a lot of work which is of great interest to me. Again, if you're new, you may not know this, but looking back through my video library, you'll see this is the case. But I believe there is truth with regards to what's called archetypal symbolism, in that it kind of taps into our psyche as a collective, and that can influence us, and that can come across in movies. And so everything that we're subjected to that comes across our senses should, in my opinion, be taken captive. And by doing that, what you're essentially doing is you're taking a stance of authority over your own life. It's an active measure that you can take to exemplify and live via the armor of God, right? So, but the news, it's again, it's almost comical. And it's like, it starts to give you the impression, if you're the kind of person, let me just say this, and it's sad because I think a lot of elderly people, because they are limited with their mobility, they wind up, sitting and watching TV a lot. And so what can happen is their entire world becomes the news, and that can really affect them. And it starts to paint the picture for any of us that this is just nothing but a clown world, just a big, stage. All the world's a stage and everything's crazy. But it's really, again, only focusing or zooming in on one aspect of it, or one side of this spectrum, right? So you're being confronted with extremes, day in and day out, and that's not reality. So but we're going to take that concept and we're going to go from there and expand, okay? And so if you think about it, when these extreme ends of a spectrum, like let's take a person, let's take someone who is interviewed on a local news station as an example, right? And there's a comedian that does like a parody of this, and he's hilarious. If I can find his channel, I don't remember if I clicked subscribe or not, but he's so funny. If I can find it, I'll drop a link. But it's just, but anyway, sorry, I get distracted. But he's really funny. Everything I think is on a spectrum, and so when the news is highlighting the extreme end of a spectrum, what I think that can do to us in a subtle, covert, hidden hand kind of way, okay, in the spirit of persuasion and manipulation, what I think it does to us is I think it plants a seed in our mind that is that, whatever that is that's being presented on the news, this perspective, this person's outlook on reality, whatever it is, we think that's crazy. Everybody can agree about it. It's like, that's bizarre. It's, but the problem here is that the seed planted is that the entire spectrum is bizarre. And we're going to go with this and dive into the details. Okay. So, okay, let me go ahead and expand here. Y'all, I have a new notebook and I think it's too small. So anyway, I'm having to skip around and find all my notes. So if you think about the concept of the devil, just look, even if you're not Christian, I hope you can still go with me and just get something from the message, the story, the examples that I give, because I feel like it's relevant to all of us, okay? But let's use this lens for a minute, okay? The Bible says that, Satan is as an angel of light, okay? So again, that's a perfect metaphor for what it's like to get entangled with someone with bad intentions in your life. A perfect metaphor. If somebody approached you and they handed you this big report or whatever it is, proof of their true intentions, which are really bad, you know, to use you, to exploit you, to harm you, whatever it is, you're going to turn and run for the hills. You know, you're never going to go along with that. So see, this metaphor of presenting oneself as an angel of light, but really being the total opposite of that, that's exactly what a wolf in sheep's clothing is, right? So, how would a wolf in sheep's clothing hide? Many ways, but one way is to ensure that we, whether it's individually or collectively, on the micro, minute scale, or the macro expanded, larger scale level, right? Either way. One way that a wolf in sheep's clothing, or many wolves in sheep's clothing, groups, whatever, can hide is to disconnect us, honest people, right, who love and appreciate and live by the truth, to disconnect us from the truth of what a trauma response within us is. To keep that information from us. Because if we were to examine ourselves, because again, a person who has good and true intentions typically is examining themselves. They're trying to always put their best foot forward and improve and be their best self for their self and their family and everyone, their community, right? So people who live enmeshed in deception, right? They don't want to look at themselves, obviously, right? So the people who do look at themselves, well, if you're depressed, if you're anxious, if you are starting to have issues with your memory, I've got a whole list here I'm going to go through, and you can't figure out what's going on, well, then you can't make a connection to the cause of it, see, the root cause of that. And so what do? A lot of times you blame yourself. And there's a lot of things out in this world that will help support you to blame yourself, see? And all that does is it keeps the wolves in sheep's clothing hidden. It provides a cloak for them. So, let's talk about the normal reactions to abuse. This can be psychological abuse, right? Covert, underhanded abuse that you can't consciously realize, sometimes for many years or decades. All right, and again, these are generalized and just a handful of examples. Your decline, okay, your physical decline, your cognitive decline, your emotional decline. Dissociation, right, meaning like you start to question reality to the degree that it's kind of like you feel like you're literally in the twilight zone. There's like this disconnection with reality. And again, these are all on a spectrum. That's a big point of my message, okay? Hypervigilance, okay? I guess an extreme version of that would be called paranoia, right? But there is a spectrum, right? Hypervigilance is literally just being on guard. That's like the good side of that, to be on guard. But it's a spectrum, so hypervigilance. As a reaction to abuse, it would probably be a little bit amped up on the paranoid side of the spectrum, right? After coming out of a situation like that. Distrust. And again, there's a good side of the spectrum and a very unhealthy side of the spectrum. Distrust is good in a way, in that you don't just immediately approach every single interaction with open arms. You know, that makes you very vulnerable and at risk. It's just not a good approach. So that's a good thing. But then on the other end of the spectrum, see, and this is the part that the news is going to amplify and focus on and put in your face, so that you make this unconscious, automatic blanket judgment on this concept altogether as bad. Okay? So the other end of the distrust spectrum would be literally never trusting anyone ever, even when you need to, because we need one another, You know, we're not meant to live this life literally completely alone forever. So again, there's an unhealthy and a healthy side to the spectrums here. Okay. It's like it's almost like when we're having the extreme unhealthy ends of the spectrum put in our face day in and day out. That, to me, that's conditioning. And it's conditioning and persuasion to get us to mentally throw the baby out with the bathwater, you might say. And so what happens is we dissociate ourselves from all of these normal trauma responses. And this is all unconscious, and these are relegated to our shadow self, and that protects the wolves in sheep's clothing, because we're literally not even able to identify these trauma responses within ourself. So you may already know all this, but this was a big realization for me. Sometimes it just takes looking at things in a certain way, in a certain light, from a certain angle for it to click. And even if it clicks, there's like another level to me to bring it down into a deeper level of understanding. Like it's there's the oh, that sounds about right, and then there's a clicking, and then there's like a resonates. You know. So anyway, but your memory is affected as well, and those are just a handful of all of the normal reactions to abuse, the things that happen to you from psychological abuse. Okay. So again, they're framed, these normal trauma responses are framed as crazy or irrational when they are showcased on the extreme end. And again, the result is that we cognitively, in our mind, we avoid them altogether, and they become relegated to our shadow. So they're pushed down under our conscious awareness, you might say. Okay? And to me, I see this as manipulation to walk the line. Okay? And so if we, again, if we frame our trauma responses as crazy, or if we're denied the fact that these are normal, right, then we'll never have a starting point to follow the line that would lead us to the cause of them, or the perpetrator or perpetrators, right? So, yes. Okay. So, I had to get that out. So, I think that this creates this unconscious fear within us. Or insecurities. It's like fear of any similarities within ourselves that we might feel arising. It's kind of like, oh gosh, it reminds you of that, you know. It's kind of like symbolism. It's kind of like showcasing a little news clip of something extreme, you know, which is just, again, the extreme end of something that's normal and helpful for you to be aware of, right? To clue you in on what's really going on. It's kind of like when you absorb that, when you take that in through your senses, then it creates this symbol in your mind, or this paradigm, right? Unconsciously in your mind, that if you have those feelings arising in yourself, it's going to ping that, and you're immediately going to shut it down because you don't want to feel like you're crazy. You're like, well, I'm not crazy. So it's just you write it off. You see what I'm saying? So it's almost like writing over that script that God gave us, the script of, here's how your mind works, here's how your body reacts. You know, animals don't censor themselves. I mean, you have the dogs where the hair stands up on their back, you know, when they perceive a threat. So it's kind of like we're trying to override that unconsciously, because we've been conditioned to do so. And that cuts us off from awareness, and it cuts us off also from healing. Because the goal is to keep us cut off from seeing and identifying the wolves in sheep's clothing. So we have this fear. Again, we start to have these trauma responses come up in us, right? It pings that, what's been imprinted on our mind, it pings that, and then we shut it down. It goes into our shadow, okay? And why would we do that? Why would we have a fear, right? Even if it's not, we're not aware of it. This whole dynamic, this whole mechanism that's going on within us. Why? I believe that this is exploitation of the instinctual need that we all have to belong to our tribe, to our community, to humanity. We want to fit in for survival. It's a survival instinct, literally. So that, in my opinion, it's kind of like, when you see these clown shows, you know, this whole concept of the clown world, it's kind of like, okay, that's interesting. Something to think about, right? Again, the result will be it keeps us from understanding deceit or identifying deceit, but it also keeps us from identifying and understanding trauma that's been inflicted on us, and therefore we're cut off from the ability to heal truly. And it's kind of like all we can do is Band-Aid therapy, and that doesn't work. It's not sustainable, right? So being of the world, what does this mean? What does this mean? Christ said, I came not to bring peace, but a sword. All right, so Galatians chapter 5, verse 1 says, stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. Okay, so what does this mean? Let's sum it up. In my words, it means don't let others pull your strings, right? That's a huge blockage to an abundant life, is to be living that way, to be living in bondage and not even know it, to know it or not know it, you know? So if you feel like there's a blockage in your life, you're stuck, there's some kind of spiritual stagnation, there's you just can't make progress, but you can't put your finger on why, there's a reason. There's a reason. Okay? So we were meant to live an abundant life. So we often focus on the impact of manipulation as an emotional one, but how has this infiltrated our very core? Let's think about this, right? This is my take, my perspective. You can sum it up in this one quote: to be or not to be. So which is it? Think about every part of what you believe makes you you. Your appearance, your clothing choices, your hairstyles, your jewelry. Think about your relationship to silliness, to being able to be comfortable, being playful. You know, when I was an art teacher in elementary school, public elementary school, I loved the fact that, you know, the seasoned teachers who have been there a long time, they had no inhibitions with the kids as far as, you know, being playful, and that was great. And if you come from a more structured, you know, environment where it's all adults, you know, in a workplace, and everybody's walking the line, you know, just so, and then you go to that kind of work environment, it's a big shift. So but it's awesome. It's awesome. And just, you know, you could take one of those awesome, incredible, very talented and fruitful and just well respected and wonderful teachers out of that environment, okay? And you can take their quality of being so, I view it this way, so secure with themselves that they can be silly and playful. You take them out of that environment and you're going to have other adults look at them like, you know, like suddenly we're all back in this middle school dynamic where, you know, you're going to have, you know, adults rolling their eyes at you and laughing at you, not with you, but at you, and all this stuff. It's just, I'm gonna be honest, I see that as nothing but insecurity. I really do. Look at your pastimes. You know, why do you like the things you think you like? You know why? If you like sports, that's not me, but if you do, then why? You know, is it for the right reasons? Is it really you? All these things, are you really doing it for you? Or are these things all possibly poisoned with fear? are driven by fear. Fear of what? Of ridicule, of rejection, right? Are these all tainted with unspoken rules, guidelines, expectations, limitations? Who are you trying to impress? Which is why I love dogs. I love pets because you can just completely be yourself. And I feel like this is a wonderful example that if you had your current social circle, if you feel more comfortable with your pet, your cat, your dog, whatever, your fish, I love my fish, our family fish. If you're more comfortable around them than you are your friends, it's time to reevaluate some things. You know what I mean? So, there's the Bible verse. I didn't write down where it is, but it says, whatever you do, literally, whatever you do it as unto God and not man. If the only one we care about aligning ourselves with is God, then we are free from the bondage of this world. So in order to fit into this world, we have to give up the freedom to live out the full spectrum of who we really are. Okay? So I see this as a form of self-sacrifice. I think the word is martyrdom, being a martyr. It's like, because it's done not unto God but unto men, right? So that's not good. That's not good. Again, we're directed to do it unto God and not man. So when you march to the beat of your own drummer, you are often treated poorly because you're a threat, right? To what? I would say the status quo. Again, of what? I would say the spiritually dead. When you frame it that way, it really puts things in perspective, doesn't it? It does for me. So, with controlling people, this has been my experience. You're pointed in a million different directions. You're not ever really allowed, because they put themselves in this position where, you kind of, you're made to think, but it's not consciously. They're scripting this dynamic between the two of you like you need permission from them, right? But it's kind of like you're not allowed to just be with these people. They've always got you, they're in the driver's seat, right? And it's very confusing. That's why I say a million different directions, right? It's exhausting, it's confusing, it's disempowering, and most of all, it keeps you cut off from who? Yourself. It keeps you, it's stealing your life from you. And I say that with passion because I've been there. So, you become so depleted, and it's a loop. You're stuck in it. You're not aware that you're stuck in it. It's not sustainable. It will put you in a state of decline, of decay, right? You might say that you can't, you might reach a point, I did, where you've declined so much that, old sayings like this really suddenly take on this whole new reality for you. Like, you can't pour from an empty cup. It's like when you live it out, then you're like, okay. Now that's been brought down further from a click to a resonates level of understanding, right? And the thing is, all your suspicions during the time when you were on this downhill slope of this person, but you wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Like forever and ever and ever. All your suspicions, typically when you reach that point where your cup is beyond empty, it's like a desert, then that's usually when the person exploiting you will jump ship. And they'll get sloppy too. Sometimes you can catch them. So I want to read to you Galatians. I read chapter 5 verse 1 earlier, but I want to read verses 1 through 8 to you here, and I want you to listen to this or hear this metaphorically. Let's use a metaphorical lens here, because I think that in light of this discussion here today, it's really going to ring true for you. It did for me. Okay. So it says, stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. Behold, I, Paul, say unto you, that if ye be circumcised, Christ shall profit you nothing. For I testify again to every man that is circumcised, that he is a debtor to the whole law. Christ is become of no effect unto you. Whosoever of you are justified by the law, ye are fallen from grace. I hope you see the symbolism here. For we through the Spirit wait for hope of righteousness by faith. For in Jesus Christ neither circumcision availeth anything, nor uncircumcision, but faith which worketh by love. I love the ending here. You did run well. Who did hinder you that you should not obey the truth? Who hindered you? Who got in your way? Who was your stumbling block? This persuasion cometh not of him that calleth you. So through that light of metaphor, it was powerful for me. It was powerful. It takes it takes the Disney movie Pinocchio to a whole nother level, doesn't it? Which, after this, I'm like, I really want to go back and watch that movie, and maybe I'll cover that. Maybe I'll do a presentation on that. So, all right, to wrap up. Matthew chapter 6 verse 5 is talking about hypocrites, right? People that do things for show, people that do things to be seen by other people, for recognition, for to have a pat on the back, for validation, whatever it is. And so it wraps up by saying they have their reward. See, this is not about judgment. This message is about self-evaluation, so that you can identify the strings in your life, so that you can cut them, so that you can become more and more free, right? As we go along, as we walk this path. So, puppet strings are truly sneaky, very sneaky. And again, we do have them on the micro and the macro level. And the thing is, they're ongoing. It's not something like a one and done. You have to consciously be vigilant and watchful, It's kind of like when you go through these things and you're made aware, it's sort of like going forward, you don't want to be on that real extreme end of the spectrum and literally approach life being paranoid, but you do want to have this approach of like keeping one eye open always. You know what I'm saying? Keep your discernment, on. And I would encourage you to, as you are doing that, keeping one eye open, being very vigilant and careful, using discernment, just maybe you can find some practices as well to keep you rooted in your own truths, right? To keep you so secure and consciously aware of what and who and how you really are, how God really made you, so that you can't be nudged off of your path ever again, right? I know this is, may sound silly to you all, but I got my first Jeep when I was 21, and it was important to me. First of all, it was a big deal just because I I bought it. That was kind of cool. You know, they're not cheap, but and when you're young like that, you know, at 21, that's a big deal. But for me, it was something I did for myself because it had meaning. It was everything it stood for, you know, the whole Jeep life. But it wasn't because I bought into that. It was because for me, it meant, it felt like an extension of myself, you know. And I could expand for a long time on that right there because I love Jeeps. But anyway, find something you're passionate about. Find several things that you're truly passionate about that are not hinged on, linked into people you know what I mean. Just take time alone to really get to know yourself and to learn what it means to truly be. Just for that purpose, not because it's expected of you or your friends do it or your family thinks you should do it or whatever it is. You know, take the time you need to truly get rooted, not just get acquainted with, but get rooted deeply in who you believe God made you to be, because that will act on its own as a wonderful defense against this clown world, right? So yeah, so the blessing in living this way, you know, consciously vigilant, is that as you go along, you'll notice that you are having a lot of falsehoods in your life just kind of dissipate. They're being cut out of your life, essentially, spiritually. Those cords are being cut. And the strings are being cut as well. So you're just becoming, again, more and more free, right? And you will also have better vision as you develop those eyes to truly see. And you'll see your people. You'll start to see your people, you know, your true friends. Because your true friends are gonna appreciate and love you for you. I'm reminded of this old song. I don't know who it was. Gavin DeGraw. I'll have to find it and put a link down there. But it's a cool song. It's like I'm thinking of two songs now from the 90s. But it's I don't want to be anything other than me, you know. And that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. Because, you know, again, even if you believe yourself to be a truthful person and a for real person, an authentic person, if you take a close look at yourself, you may find some strings, you know, that are directing, you know, your choices, and that's going to manifest and show through in everything you do and who you are. So just I just encourage you to take that time, you know, to learn how to cut those strings and how to be truly free. So yes, stay true to you. Examine your fruit. If you feel that you can only do this and only do that, right? Let it serve as a gentle reminder that you're not consciously. You might think that you are, but again, there's a difference in it being a conscious awareness type thing, right? It's not about self-criticism or judgment. It's just a gentle reminder that maybe I'm not consciously on board with the Almighty, because the Almighty doesn't want me to have strings, you know, going to other people out here, okay? And the one way to know for sure is that, again, the Bible says that we can do all things, right, with Christ who gives us strength. So, yes, all things. We are not limited. We are free when we don't have those strings. So I hope that this got the wheels turning for you. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for coming along to hear the message, and I hope that you have a beautiful day. I will see you again very soon.